What's up, guys? My name's Tynan. Real quick, does anybody read my blog, Tynan.com? Cool. I'm a blogger at Tynan.com. I've written a few books. And what I'm most psyched about, what I'm most proud of is what I'm working on now. It's a blogging platform called Set, where we help people build their audience and connect with their audience better. And today I'm going to talk to you about what happened when I turned 30. So if I were to describe my 20s, and I was honest about it, I would say that basically I just kind of did whatever I wanted and tried to have as many interesting stories as possible. Like probably I would have told you I had some goals, but really they were just sort of fantasies that I hoped would come true. And so I dropped out of school, I bought a house, I put an outdoor swimming pool in my living room. My friends and I bought a school bus, tore it apart, drove it all around the country to do road trips. I sold everything I owned and traveled all around the world. I bought an RV and I lived in it right outside this building actually when I lived in Texas. And so, I just kind of had this really good time in my 20s, and all of a sudden I'm about to turn 30, and I don't expect much. I just sort of expect things will keep going as they had. Because, I had all these momentous birthdays and nothing really changed, right? Like you turn 16 and you have a car, and that's kind of a big one because you have freedom. But then you turn 18 and you can buy pornography and cigarettes, and the internet was invented and I don't smoke, so that wasn't exciting. And I turned 21 and I've never drank before, so that wasn't very exciting to me. I turned 25 and I could rent cars at reasonable rates. And that was exciting to me, to be honest. But these peaks aren't that high. And so I turned 30 and I thought, whatever, it's just another birthday. But actually, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like I could feel it viscerally that something was different. And the way I felt was that I was standing on this timeline, and I'm here at 30. And I look back at 20, and it's not as far away as I would have expected it to be. Like when I was 20, if I looked back 10 years at 10, that was my entire life. That was all my memories. And here I am at 30, I'm looking back at 20, and I think, okay, a lot of stuff happened there, but that's a memorable, manageable chunk of time. And then I look over in this direction, and all of a sudden 40 is right here. And, I thought there were all these things that I thought would happen by the time I was 30, and none of them did. And it's not that I was unlucky, it's that I didn't make them happen. And so I decided that I was going to get serious. And that's just sort of the term I use for it, but what it means specifically is three things. I decided I was going to have one and only one project. I decided that one project was going to be my overriding first priority. And I decided that I was going to give it a long defined time horizon. So one by one, what that means is, all my life I would have a million projects. And I think this is a natural thing we do because we don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket. And we're afraid of failure. And so we try to buffer it. We think, okay, this is the project I really want to work, but I don't want it to fail. And then I have nothing and all that work's been for nothing. So I'm going to do this project too, and then I can sort of comfort myself and say, well, at least I have this project, maybe something will happen here. But when you think about what that really means when you have multiple projects, it means maybe it means that your projects just aren't that great, aren't that big, and aren't that challenging, and it probably doesn't matter if you accomplish them, and you probably won't be dedicated enough to do it anyway. Or it means you have a ton of hubris because you have this big goal, and you think that it might only require 70% or 50% or 30% of your effort. And so if you're a competitive field, like building a blogging platform, for example, I would have to think that 50% of my effort could beat a whole company working at 100%, which is sort of insane. So I decided I would have one project, and that project for me was Set. And then I decided that it would be my overriding first priority. And overriding is the important word here because that means that every single decision I make goes through this filter of, is this the best thing for my project? And that doesn't mean that you just work 24 hours a day. Because you have to do supporting stuff too, right? If I'm not slept well enough, then I'm not going to work well. If I'm not eating healthy food, I'm not going to work well. If I don't meditate, if I don't have good friends, I'm not going to work well. But it does mean that every single decision goes through this process. And so what that looks like in practice is I'm sitting there at my laptop, I'm coding, and my friend calls me and he says, hey, do you want to play laser tag? And I do want to play laser tag. But I don't. And I say, no, I'm going to work. And it's human nature, at least my nature, to not do that. To think, I could put that work off tomorrow. I could do it later. What I'm working on isn't that important. And that's what I did in my 20s, is I would always take those distractions. And, when you think about time spent on a project, it's not just the raw time that you spend that matters. It's the duration. Like Joseph was talking about Pomodoro method, which I also don't really like. Because, if you're in a creative field, like you're writing or you're programming, you're trying to create something, there's a really big difference between a 4-hour block of time where you can get immersed in the problem and keep that momentum going and 8 half-hour chunks. And if you're willing to accept those distractions into your life, then your workday is going to look like these half-hour chunks. And so then the last one is to have a long defined time horizon. And so for me, I said, for 3 years, no matter what, I will do nothing but work on set. It can look like an abject, like our path can go like this, and if I have 2 years left, I'm just going to try to get it out of there. And the reason you do this is because there's something called a pain period, which happens in almost anything difficult you do, whether it's building a new habit, building a relationship, building a business, doing almost any project. And the pain period is sort of like maybe a third in or whatever, just like a little ways into your project where the excitement has dropped a little bit, the low-hanging fruit has been plucked, and now you've come across these problems that you never anticipated happening. And at the same time, there's no glory in it. Because, like with set, we didn't have users that liked it. We didn't even have anybody who knew we were working on this. We're coming up against technical problems that we didn't know if they were solvable or not. And we were long past this phase of like, hey, wouldn't it be fun to like draw in Photoshop what a blogging platform would look like? And if you don't have that defined long, like years or like at least like a 1 year time period, what happens in your brain is you think, yeah, this is a hard project. This might be a little too hard. I should do this project. Because for this project, you're thinking of the low-hanging fruit. You're thinking of the glory, and you're not thinking of the unexpected problems, because by definition, they're unexpected. And so this is sort of like picking one project where you are putting all of your eggs in that one basket, and you're saying, no matter what, for 3 years, I'm going to work on this. So these three factors are really, really difficult to do even just one of them. And when you put all three together, it's extremely hard. And so, I think there's this inclination when you're trying to give advice to somebody, you want to make it sound as easy as possible so they'll actually do it. But this isn't one of those things. Like, it's actually really, really, really difficult. And when I did it almost as a punishment to myself because, like a good-natured punishment. But I thought, hey, I'm 30. I've kind of kicked the can pretty far down the road now. And there are certain things I want to accomplish. And like, now I'm going to have to suffer and like suck it up and get them done. So I thought of it as a punishment, and I didn't expect it to be fun. And it wasn't as fun as my life in my 20s for sure, but what was surprising to me was how deeply satisfying it was, how rewarding it was, and how much I actually enjoyed it. And I think that's because really when you think about these things, it's almost like a formula for getting you into the flow state, which is one of the most satisfying, pleasurable human experiences. And for those of you who don't know, the flow state is it's basically when you're working at exactly the right difficulty level. So you're accomplishing a lot, it's challenging, so you're engaged, but it's not too hard. And so, I don't think everybody has to decide to get serious. I don't think most people will. I think that one of the cool things about the world is that it's kind of like this crazy experiment where we all have our own goals and we can all do whatever we want. And, just like I could have told you what my goals were in my 20s, and if you looked at them, you'd say, well, actually, your real underlying goal is to have fun or do interesting things. I think if you look at what people really want, no matter what they say, a lot of people, their goal is just to be comfortable. And that's probably a biological thing, and that's fine. But for other people, probably most people who are here, because if you're going to come in the rain to an event like this, you're probably one of these people where you have big goals that you want to accomplish. And if you are one of those people, I think what you really have to accept is that you have only two choices. And the first of those two choices is to accept that that goal is not going to happen. And this happens to a lot of people, right? I think we all have some big goal or some big fantasy, and then we make some effort towards it, we hope it'll happen, and then it doesn't, and we think, oh, well, that's too bad it didn't happen. And I think that if you look into the future and you see that that is like honestly where your motivation level is, actually just cut it off and do something else, right? But if you decide that you do want to get serious, if you decide that you do want that goal done, I think really the only path is to get serious and to take these steps. And I think that because if I look at any of the people I admire and I look at how they got where they were, they wouldn't have called it getting serious. Maybe they wouldn't have called it anything because they're not a nerd like I am. But they followed those steps, right? Like those are sort of the steps of greatness if you think about, a lot of these people. And so if you are one of those people who has big goals and maybe you're not sure if you're going there or if you've been frustrated, I hope you do consider getting serious and joining us on that path. Thank you.